What's going on, you guys? Today we're going to be learning the song You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch by Darius Rucker. Before we get into it, I would like to ask that if you find this guitar tutorial helpful, that you please subscribe. That would mean a lot to me, and I would really, really appreciate that. Now let's get into it. You are watching Logan's Lessons. Capo, 3rd fret. Let's start with the chord progression. And there's really only 2 chord progressions in this song, and we'll alternate in between them. So the first chord we have in the first chord progression is an A minor chord. To play an A minor chord, you will place your middle finger on the 2nd fret of your D string, your 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of your G, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of your B string. That moves over to a D minor chord, which you will play by placing your middle finger on the 2nd fret of your G string, your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of your B, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of your high E. D minor. So A minor to D minor. Then we travel on over to a G major chord. To play a G major chord, you will place your middle finger on the 3rd fret of your low E string, your 1st finger on the 2nd fret of your A string, your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of your B, and your pinky on the 3rd fret of your high E string. That's a G major chord. So far we have an A minor to D minor to G. 4th chord we have is a C major chord. To play a C major chord, you will place your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of your A string, your middle finger on the 2nd fret of your D, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of your B string. Then you go back to an A minor chord, which was the first chord we learned. Then we travel on over to my favorite chord in this song, which is a B7 chord. To play a B7, we will place our middle finger on the 2nd fret of our A string, our 1st finger on the 1st fret of our D string, our 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of our G, and our pinky finger on the 2nd fret of our high E string. That one's a little bit of a squeeze, but I believe that you can get that. And then finally we have an E major chord. To play an E major chord, we will leave our middle finger on the 2nd fret of our A string. Our 3rd finger goes on to the 2nd fret of our D, and our 1st finger on the 1st fret of our G string. So the first chord progression we have goes from A minor to D minor, G, C, A minor, B7, E. Okay? The second chord progression changes slightly from that. We start on the A minor, we go to D minor just like the first chord progression, G, C, all of that is just the same. But here it changes. Instead of going back to the A minor to the B7 to the E major, instead we go to an F major chord. To play an F major chord, you will place your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of your A string, your pinky finger on the 3rd fret of your D string, your middle finger on the 2nd fret of your G, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of your B. You play that, and then you go to the E major. So that's in the stead of A minor to B7 to E. We instead go from F to E. So the first chord progression is A minor, D, G, C, A minor, B7, E. The second chord progression is A minor, D minor, G, C, F, F, E. Like so. So those are the 2 chord progressions. The only things that vary from section to section are the strumming pattern, and after the verse there's a turnaround section that changes chord progressions every single time, which we'll get to. So the first verse's strumming pattern is all up strums on the off beats, like this. 1 up strum per chord. But when you get to the E major, we do our normal up strum, followed by a down strum. Then on to the second chord progression. Then for the F, you do 2 down strums, and you do 1 E major, 1 down strum for the E major. And that gets us into the turnaround. I'll play that verse for you. Then right here we hit that B7 chord again, this time just dramatically strumming it out. And that happens every single time after the chorus. It's what happens after that that changes. So after the first verse, you have that B7, and then you go to an E major chord, which you strum as a down, down, like that. And then you go into the first chord progression. A minor, D minor, G, C, A minor, B7, and then for the E major chord, you're gonna do a down, up, down. So now the whole first turnaround will sound like this. Do that with me. The second verse is almost exactly identical to the first one, with the only delineation being regarding the strumming pattern in the first chord progression's C major chord. Instead of one up strum, we play two up strums. Just quicker, so it'll sound like this in context. Do that with me. One more time. Then we get into the turnaround. The chord progression is just shortened. You do the strummed out B7 chord, then one dramatic up strum on the E major, and then you do an A minor, D minor, B7, and then down strum on the E major. So you have the B7 strummed out, one dramatic up strum on the E major, A minor, D minor, B7, E major, like that. Allow me to do that for you. Do that with me. The third verse gets a complete renovation in terms of strumming pattern. We do all up strums still, but this time twice as fast and twice as many, like this. Turnaround after the third verse is exactly the same as the second, and then the fourth verse is exactly the same as the first, but then the turnaround after the fourth verse changes drastically. The turnaround after the fourth verse is where he says, "The three words to best describe you are as follows," and I quote, "Stink, stank, stunk." And the chords for that, you have the normal strummed out B7 chord. And then as up strums, we're gonna hit B7, E major, B7, A minor, like that. And the A minor is a down strum. So B7, E major, B7, A minor, okay? So, three words to best describe you are as follows, and I quote, "Stink, stank, stunk." Like that. Do that with me. The three words to best describe you are as follows, and I quote, "Stink, stank, stunk." Cool. Right after that, we have a solo, which is effectively just the first chord progression and then the second chord progression played in the fashion of the first verse. Then we have effectively the second verse again with double up strums on the C major chord. But this verse's turnaround is different. You hang on the B7 for a lot longer than to the E major, and then you end the turnaround with the A minor to D minor, B7 to E major. So that one will sound like this. Like I said, you hang on the B7 for quite a while on that one. Then you go back to a normal verse, which is just like the first verse, but the turnaround for this one is actually the outro. And the outro has some pretty cool chords, and it changes significantly. You still have the same B7 to E major, followed by the same A minor, D minor, G, C, But here we have an interesting turn of chordal phrase. We go from the A minor to D minor. Just let the D minor ring out for a second, like this. Oh, those are both down strums, by the way. Then G major to F major, then G7. So to play G7, you'll place your third finger on the third fret of your low E string, your middle finger on the second fret of your A string, and your first finger on the first fret of your high E string. So you have A minor to D minor, G, F, G7. Do that with me. You have an A minor, D minor, G, F major, G7, and then you go to an E major chord. Okay, so A minor, D minor, G, F, G7, E major, and then you hit the B7 chord one more time. This time strumming it like this. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. Like that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You let that last one ring out. So I'll do the whole outro for you. You have the... I'll do that slowly. Do that with me now. And now full speed. That is how you play You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Comment or DM me if you have a song request. If you wish to be notified of future videos, hit the bell. I sincerely hope that you are well. Please do me a favor and hit that like button blue. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe too. I hope this video has been a blessing. You've been watching Logan's Lessons.